The human delegation had never expected to witness something so bizarre. They had traveled across light years to meet the Vakar Empire, a civilization of shimmering, tall, elegant beings whose culture seemed as foreign as the stars themselves. Humans had prepared for diplomacy, for trade agreements, for cautious alliances, but they had not prepared for a joke. A cruel, sharp joke. In the grand hall of the Vakar Palace, under towering crystal chandeliers that cast rainbow lights across polished floors, the court gathered. Aliens of every shape and hue whispered, glancing at one figure in particular, Princess Lyra, daughter of the Vakar Queen. She was said to be infertile, a condition in Vakari culture that carried not just sadness, but shame. It was a mark that made her a subject of ridicule, a life of whispered jokes and quiet scorn. And so, in front of the humans, the court decided to make her a gift. "Take her," a noble whispered to the human ambassador. "We hear humans like curiosities." The delegation froze. Lyra, the princess, tall and graceful, stood silently beside the throne. Her silver-blue skin seemed to glow under the hall lights, but her eyes told another story. They were pools of quiet sorrow, lined with resilience. She did not frown, she did not plead, she did not cry. She simply looked at the humans with calm, measured attention, as though waiting to see how this absurd situation would unfold. Commander Elias, a human diplomat chosen to escort her back to Earth, felt a mix of confusion, irritation, and curiosity. He had faced hostile aliens, corrupt officials, and dangerous negotiations, but nothing quite like this. We are to take her?" he asked, unsure if the words were real or if he was trapped in a surreal dream. "Yes," the court said, stifling their laughter behind jeweled hands. "Consider her a gift, a joke." Elias glanced at Lyra, who gave no sign of protest. She moved with a grace that reminded him of water flowing, smooth, quiet, yet powerful in its own way. She followed without hesitation, her steps measured, elegant, almost serene. Her hair, long and silver, swayed behind her like starlight. She carried herself like royalty, though the court's cruelty seemed designed to erase any trace of dignity. On the journey back to the human ship, the hallways were silent, except for the faint hum of alien lights. Lyra walked slightly ahead, her head held high as if trying to distance herself from the whispers of mockery behind her. Elias, usually calm and controlled, found himself unsettled. He wanted to speak, to break the tension, but words felt inadequate. Finally, he asked softly, "Do you understand why this is happening?" Lyra's eyes met his. There was no anger, no fear, only quiet determination. "I understand," she said. "They think I am a mistake. They think I am weak. They are wrong." Her voice was soft, but there was steel hidden in it. Elias realized something then. This was not a fragile girl. She was a force waiting to rise, a storm disguised in grace. The court may have thought she was a joke, but she carried a quiet power they could not see. The ship's engines roared to life as they departed the Vakar Empire, stars streaking past the viewing ports. Lyra stood silently, staring out at the endless universe as if it belonged to her. Elias watched her, a strange admiration blooming in his chest. This princess, handed to humans as a joke, seemed untouched by the scorn of her people. She had endured the humiliation with dignity, and something deep inside Elias told him she would not remain a joke for long. As the stars blurred outside, he wondered quietly, what happens when someone who has been underestimated learns that their strength is greater than anyone imagined? Lyra smiled faintly to herself, though Elias could not see it. Somewhere deep inside, she was already planning her next move, and the humans, unwittingly, were about to witness something they would never forget. Life on Earth was nothing like the Vakar Palace. The skies were gray, the cities loud, and the humans unpredictable. Lyra felt out of place from the moment she stepped off the ship. The humans stared at her strange silver-blue skin, her tall, elegant frame, and the way she carried herself like a queen in exile. Some were curious, some frightened, and some openly mocked the alien princess who had been handed to them as a joke. She learned quickly that she could not rely on anyone to understand her. The language, the customs, even the simplest gestures all felt foreign. The scientists and diplomats who observed her like an experiment often whispered about her quiet sorrow or compliance. But Lyra refused to show them the full depth of her feelings. She knew that if she showed weakness, they would see her as less than they already thought she was. and she would never let that happen. Elias, her human escort, became her reluctant companion in this strange new world. At first, he barely spoke to her. He did not know how to bridge the vast gap between their worlds. But over time, he began to notice small details: how she lingered at the edges of sunlight, how she studied human behavior with quiet intensity, how she could memorize things with a single glance. She was not fragile. She was not lost. She was learning, absorbing, adapting. Nights were the hardest. Alone in her quarters, Lyra would look out the window at the stars, imagining the Vekar palace, imagining the life she had been robbed of. Sometimes she whispered to herself in Vekari, words of longing and determination that Elias could not understand. He would occasionally hear her soft voice, a murmur against the hum of the ventilation, and feel an ache in his chest. She was so strong yet so alone. One evening, Elias found her sitting quietly on the balcony, staring at the city below.
"You think they will ever respect you?"
he asked, unsure why he was speaking. Lyra turned to him slowly, her eyes reflecting the pale city lights. "Respect is not given. It is earned," she said softly. "And I will earn it in my own way." He was taken aback. The humans had expected her to be weak, defeated, compliant. But there was a fire in her, a quiet, simmering determination. He felt something stir inside him, a mix of admiration and unease. He realized she was more than just a princess or a joke. She was a force, a mind sharp enough to challenge worlds. Years passed in a blur of study, observation, and quiet endurance. Lyra learned human medicine, human science, and even human history. She did not stop. She adapted her diet, her routines, and even her voice to communicate more clearly. But she never forgot who she was or where she came from. She kept a small crystal from her home planet, hidden on her nightstand, a reminder that she had a life and a family that believed her incapable. She would prove them wrong. Elias often watched her from a distance, sometimes feeling helpless, sometimes feeling inspired. He had never seen someone endure so much with such quiet grace. She's remarkable, he would think. And maybe humans can learn from her too. Despite the isolation, despite the cruel joke that had brought her here, Lyra never lost hope. Somewhere deep inside, she was planning, learning, preparing. She knew that one day she would return, not as the princess they had laughed at, not as a fragile gift, but as someone who could change everything. The human delegation thought they had received a fragile, lost alien. They had no idea they had brought back a spirit that could endure centuries of scorn, a mind that could conquer challenges humans had not yet imagined, and above all, they had not yet realized that the quietest voice could become the loudest roar. Lyra stood on the balcony that night, her silver-blue skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. She whispered to the stars, to the distance between worlds, to her people who had mocked her, "I will return. I will prove you wrong, and no one will ever doubt me again." Life on Earth had become a routine for Lyra, though it was never easy. The humans treated her like a curiosity, a symbol of interstellar absurdity. But she endured quietly, never letting their laughter break her. She spent her days studying human medicine, biology, and technology. She experimented, observed, and learned everything she could. To anyone else, it seemed obsessive. To her, it was preparation. Elias often watched her in silence. There was a quiet dignity in her movements, a focus that drew him in. She worked tirelessly, often late into the night, with a single glowing lamp illuminating her delicate features. He did not always understand what she was doing, but he could sense the purpose behind her actions. One evening, a young human scientist, Dr. Mara Chen, approached Elias in hushed tones. "Commander," she said, her eyes wide with excitement, "we may have found a way to help Princess Lyra conceive." Elias froze. "What do you mean?" he asked cautiously. Dr. Chen glanced toward Lyra's quarters before continuing. "Her biology is unique, but she has adapted to human medical technology in ways we did not think possible. If we combine her natural biology with the procedures we've developed, it might work. She could become a mother." Elias's mind raced. Lyra had never spoken of wanting children, never revealed such a personal desire. And yet hearing this, he felt a strange warmth bloom in his chest. "Do you think she wants this?" he asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. Dr. Chen nodded. "She has been experimenting in private for years. She has been trying to adapt herself, to bridge the gap between human and Vakar biology. She wants this, more than we can imagine. That night, Elias approached Lyra on the balcony. The stars shimmered above them, silent witnesses to a universe filled with impossibilities. Lyra, he said gently, Dr. Chen believes there is a way you could have a child. Do you want that? Lyra turned slowly, her eyes reflecting starlight. For a moment, she said nothing. Then quietly, with a calm strength that startled him, she whispered, I do, and I will try. I will learn everything. I will endure everything. If it is possible, I will make it happen. Elias felt his chest tighten. She was not just a princess, not just an alien. She was a force of nature, unyielding, determined, and courageous. The humans had laughed at her once, called her a joke, handed her to strangers as if she were a toy. Now she was choosing her path, deciding her fate, and no one, neither human nor Vakar, would control her destiny. For the next months, Lyra threw herself into the work. She studied human fertility, experimented with alien genetics, and adapted her body to new technologies. Failures came often, but she never wavered. Each setback strengthened her resolve, sharpened her focus, and reminded her of the court's cruel laughter. She would prove them wrong. Elias observed her quietly, helping when he could, supporting without interfering. He had come to respect her in ways he had never imagined. She had become more than a princess handed as a joke. She was a pioneer, a bridge between two species, a symbol of resilience and intelligence. One night, after another long day of study, Lyra looked at Elias and smiled faintly. I feel it, she said, voice soft but filled with certainty. I feel that soon. Soon, everything will change. Not just for me, but for everyone. Humans, Vakari, they will see that strength is not given, it is chosen. Elias nodded, swallowing hard. You've already proven that, he said. Lyra's eyes glimmered with quiet determination. She gazed out at the stars, imagining a future where no one could mock her, where she could shape her own destiny. And in that moment, Elias realized that the princess they had all underestimated was about to do something no one thought possible. Somewhere deep inside, Lyra knew that her journey was only beginning. The laughter of the Vakar court, the whispers of humans who saw her as fragile, all of it would be transformed into triumph. She would return not as a joke, not as a powerless princess, but as a mother, a force, and a symbol that no one could ever dismiss again. The months turned into a blur of trials, experiments, and quiet determination. Lyra never stopped. Every morning she rose before the sun, her silver-blue skin glinting faintly in the early light, and immersed herself in study. She recorded notes, adjusted formulas, and practiced techniques humans had never imagined possible. The scientists around her watched in awe. No alien, or human, had ever shown such focus, such resilience. Elias often stood in the doorway of her laboratory, silent, observing. He had become her quiet companion, sometimes assistant, sometimes guardian, but mostly witness. He watched as she endured failures that would have crushed others. Machines broke. Procedures failed. Data was misread. Yet every time she started again, each mistake was a lesson, each setback a step toward something greater. One evening, Lyra called Elias over. Her eyes shone with a rare intensity, a mixture of excitement and fear. I think it is working, she whispered. Her hands trembled slightly as she showed him the readings on the monitor. The numbers were precise, perfect in a way that no human scientist had expected. Elias swallowed hard. You mean, it could actually happen? Lyra nodded, her expression calm but radiant. It will happen, she said firmly. I have adapted myself to the science, to the technology, to the possibilities. Soon I will give life where none thought possible. Her words echoed in his mind. He remembered the Vakar court, the laughter, the whispers. They had treated her like a fragile toy, an infertile princess with no worth. And now here she was, standing in a human laboratory, transforming herself, transforming the impossible into reality. The process was not easy. Lyra endured pain, fatigue, and moments of doubt. Elias held her hand during the nights when she was exhausted, whispering encouragement, offering silent strength. You are more powerful than you know, he told her. You've always been more powerful. Lyra smiled faintly, squeezing his hand. I do not do this for myself, she said softly. I do this for the life I will bring, for the people who once doubted me, for the bridge between our worlds. Strength is not given. It is earned, and I will earn it. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the transformation became undeniable. The scientists began to whisper, not in doubt but in awe. She is adapting in ways we cannot predict, they said. She is creating life where none believed possible. Elias watched Lyra during those moments of quiet triumph. She had changed, not just physically, but in the presence she carried. There was a new confidence in the way she moved, a quiet authority that no one could ignore. The princess who had been handed to humans as a joke was becoming something greater than any expectation. One night, under the soft glow of the lab lights, Lyra looked at Elias. Soon, she said simply. Soon they will see. The laughter, the mockery. It will not matter. They will understand what it means to underestimate someone who refuses to be broken. Elias nodded, unable to find words. She was no longer a princess in exile. She was a pioneer, a mother-to-be, and a force that neither human nor alien society could ignore. In her quiet determination, she carried hope, defiance, and the promise of something extraordinary. As the stars shone through the lab's windows, Lyra whispered softly to herself, almost like a prayer. I will not fail. I will return as someone they cannot deny. I will carry life, I will carry hope, and I will remind them all that no one is powerless unless they choose to be. And somewhere deep inside, Elias felt the truth of her words. She was no longer the fragile joke given to humans. She was a transformation in motion, a force of life, and a symbol that strength, true strength, could rise from even the cruelest beginnings. The first signs came quietly, almost unnoticed. Lyra had spent months preparing, studying, and adapting, and now the results began to show. One morning, Dr. Mara Chen burst into Elias's office, her face alight with disbelief and joy. Commander, you should see this, she said breathlessly. It's working. Princess Lyra's efforts, they're succeeding. Elias felt his heart race. He had watched her endure so much, mockery, isolation, frustration, and countless failures. And now finally her determination was bearing fruit. He followed Dr. Chen to the laboratory where Lyra stood with her usual calm grace, though her eyes glimmered with an emotion she rarely allowed herself to show. Hope. Commander, she said softly, turning to him. The time has come. The process has taken hold. I will give life. Elias swallowed hard. For a moment he could not speak. The human delegation had once received her as a fragile, laughable gift. The Vekar court had dismissed her as weak, infertile, unworthy. And yet here she was, defying every expectation, bending science and biology to her will. The days that followed were filled with careful monitoring, medical checks, and quiet excitement. Lyra endured the process with her characteristic calm strength, often working through nights, adjusting, learning, perfecting. She never complained, never faltered. Even in moments of pain or fatigue, there was a quiet determination in her eyes, a fire that refused to be dimmed. Elias found himself standing by her side more often, offering support where he could. He helped prepare instruments, recorded observations, and simply held her hand when the nights were long and exhausting. Though he rarely said it aloud, he was in awe of her. She had become more than a princess, more than a student of human science. She was a pioneer, a bridge between species, and a symbol of resilience no one had imagined possible. Then, one quiet morning, Lyra turned to Elias, her eyes shimmering. It is confirmed, she whispered. Life is growing within me. I'm going to be a mother. Elias felt his chest tighten. He wanted to laugh, cry, and cheer all at once. The princess, handed to humans as a cruel joke, had not only endured but had triumphed. She had transformed impossibility into reality. News of her success spread cautiously, first among the scientists, then the human delegation, and eventually reaching the ears of the Vekar court. The same people who had mocked her, laughed at her, and dismissed her now listened in stunned silence. Their whispers of doubt were replaced with awe, their scorn replaced with admiration. Lyra had achieved what no one believed possible, and her quiet determination spoke louder than any words could. Elias watched her as she held her hand gently over her abdomen, a soft smile touching her lips. They laughed at me, she said quietly, but I am not a joke. I have endured. I have learned. And now I create life, not for their approval but for my own purpose, for our future." He nodded, speechless. The years of loneliness, struggle, and quiet determination had led to this moment. She had transformed herself, her life, and the way both humans and Vakari would see her forever. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to imagine a future beyond pain and mockery. A future where she returned not as a fragile, dismissed princess, but as a mother, a creator, a force of change. She had endured laughter and disbelief, but she had risen above it all. As the sun set over the Earth's horizon, Lyra stood in the laboratory, her silver-blue skin glowing softly in the golden light. Elias stood beside her, quietly proud, knowing that this moment was only the beginning. The princess who had once been a joke had become something extraordinary. And soon the world, both human and Vakar, would have no choice but to recognize her strength. Lyra looked toward the stars and whispered, "I will return. They will see me as I am. Not a princess, not a joke, but a mother and someone who cannot be ignored." The day Lyra left Earth was quiet, yet charged with anticipation. She had spent years in this world, learning, enduring, and transforming herself in ways no one had believed possible. Now she was ready to return to the Vakar Empire, not as the princess who had been given away as a joke, but as a mother carrying life, a symbol of resilience and strength that no one could ignore. Elias stood beside her at the starport, his hand lightly brushing hers. "You are ready," he said softly, though his voice carried the weight of all the years he had witnessed her endure. Lyra's eyes met his. "I have waited my whole life for this moment," she replied. "I will show them, all of them, that no one can define my worth except me." The journey through space was silent but full of meaning. Lyra gazed out at the stars, imagining her home planet, imagining the court that had once mocked her. Memories of laughter, whispers, and judgment passed through her mind like shadows, but she no longer felt pain. She felt determination, pride, and a quiet, powerful joy. When the ship entered Vakar orbit, the palace appeared below, shimmering like a crystal fortress. The court gathered, expecting the return of their fragile princess, perhaps to dismiss her once more. But what they saw instead left them stunned. Lyra descended, her form radiant, her presence commanding. She held her child close, a tiny being of both Vakari and human heritage, delicate yet alive with promise. The court's whispers died in midair. Aliens turned to one another, eyes wide in disbelief. The princess who had been dismissed, mocked, and given as a joke had returned. Transformed, the queen, Lyra's mother, stepped forward. Her regal face showed a flicker of uncertainty, of disbelief. "Lyra, is this true?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You have returned as a mother?" Lyra nodded, her gaze steady. "It is true," she said softly, yet with authority. "I have endured, I have learned, and I have created life where none believed possible. I am no longer the princess you dismissed. I am a mother, a bridge between worlds and someone who cannot be ignored." The court fell silent. Some turned away, ashamed of their past mockery. Others whispered in awe. Humans and Vakari alike watched the quiet miracle unfold before them. The princess who had once been powerless had now become a force of change, uniting two worlds simply by existing. Elias stood behind her, silently proud. He remembered the first day he had met her, the fragile, distant princess given to humans as a joke. And now he saw her radiant and powerful, carrying life and hope with every step. He knew that nothing would ever be the same for her, for the court, or for the empire itself. The queen approached slowly, her eyes fixed on her granddaughter, the child in Lyra's arms. A mix of awe and pride softened her features. "You have done what we thought impossible," she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. "You have made us stronger than we knew." Lyra smiled faintly, bowing her head in respect but not submission. "I have done this for life," she said. "For our people, for our future, for all those who are told they are powerless. Strength is not given. It is earned, and it cannot be taken away." The court could no longer deny her. The laughter and mockery of the past were silenced by the undeniable truth. Lyra, the princess they had given away as a joke, had returned as a mother, a symbol of endurance, courage, and hope. Elias reached for her hand, feeling the warmth and quiet power in her grip. "You've changed everything," he whispered. Lyra looked down at her child, then back at the court. "No one decides my worth," she said firmly, "and no one ever will." In that moment, the Vakar Empire witnessed the birth of a legend. Not a princess to be laughed at, but a mother, a leader, and a reminder that courage, determination, and love could overcome even the cruelest beginnings. The palace of the Vakar Empire was quiet, yet charged with awe. Whispers spread through the halls like wildfire. The princess they had once mocked, the fragile girl they had handed to humans as a joke, had returned not alone but with a child, a living symbol of strength, resilience, and hope. Lyra walked through the corridors with calm authority. The silver-blue glow of her skin reflected softly in the crystal walls. Her child, small and delicate, rested safely in her arms. Every step she took carried confidence and quiet power. This was no longer a princess who obeyed or feared. This was a mother, a bridge between worlds, a force that could not be denied. Elias walked beside her, silent but proud. He had seen her grow from the quiet, distant girl handed to him as a burden into a woman who could change the course of her people's history. Every trial, every lonely night, every tear and failure had built her into someone extraordinary. The queen, Lyra's mother, approached with a mixture of awe, pride, and humility. She reached out and gently touched her granddaughter, her eyes glistening. You have done what none of us believed possible," she said softly. "You have brought hope in life where we thought there was none." Lyra smiled, a soft and radiant expression that held both love and strength. "I did this," she said, her voice steady and filled with quiet authority. "Not to prove them wrong, not to show strength, but because it was my choice. Strength is not given, it is taken. Courage is not inherited, it is earned. And I will never let anyone decide my worth again." The court, once full of laughter and whispers of scorn, now bowed in respect. Aliens and humans alike watched in awe, witnessing a transformation that transcended ridicule, doubt, and prejudice. Lyra had proven that true strength was not measured by status, power, or birthright. It was measured by perseverance, courage, and the will to rise against impossible odds. Elias watched her hold her child, feeling a deep unspoken pride. He had seen the first glimmers of hope in her eyes, the nights she spent staring at the stars, wondering if she could ever change her fate. And now the girl who had endured so much had become a symbol that even the weakest, most underestimated being could leave an indelible mark on history. Lyra turned to him, her eyes reflecting the starlight and wisdom she had gained. "We have changed something, Elias," she whispered. "Not just for me, not just for this child, but for all of us. For every life that has been dismissed, laughed at, or underestimated. No one is powerless unless they choose to be." Her child stirred in her arms, reaching out with tiny hands. Lyra's smile softened, filled with love and hope. She realized that life was not about revenge or proving people wrong. It was about creating, nurturing, and showing the future what courage and determination could achieve. The queen nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. She had judged her daughter too quickly, too harshly. Now she saw not weakness but wisdom, strength, and an unbreakable spirit. "You have shown us all what it means to endure," she admitted. "Your courage will be remembered for generations." Lyra walked through the palace gardens, her child nestled safely against her chest. Elias followed, silently marveling at the quiet, unstoppable force she had become. The stars above seemed brighter, as if reflecting her triumph. Every step she took marked a new beginning, not just for herself but for humans and Vakari alike. In the years to come, tales of Lyra's journey spread across the galaxy. She became a legend, a reminder that strength was not inherited, that courage was not given, and that even in the face of mockery, doubt, and cruelty, one could rise to change the world. As she stood among her people, holding her child, Lyra whispered to herself softly, almost a promise. "I am no longer a joke. I am a mother, a force, and a bridge between worlds. And nothing will ever take that away from me." Elias smiled beside her, knowing that he had witnessed history. The princess, once given away as a joke, had returned as a mother, a pioneer, and a living legend. And across the galaxy, no one would ever doubt her again.